Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
Welcome back, Sixers, to another episode of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. This is episode 181. Today is February 10th, 2025. I am Bill, and I'm joined, as always, by my blustery co-hosts, Amy and Jordan. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Before we get started, we do want to remind our listeners that the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is not a spoiler-free podcast. That means that if there is something in the Cosmere you haven't read and you're worried about hearing spoilers, you just might want to go read those first, then come back and join in our discussion. Because tonight we're starting our deep dive into Wind and Truth, taking a closer look at each of the individual major storylines. Tonight's focus is going to be on Kaladin's and Szeth's story. For those of you who listen to the podcast recordings or watch the videos on YouTube, we do want to remind you that it's possible for listeners to interact with us live via chat as we record each episode at www.youtube.com/Cosmere Studies. We record episodes every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, so please join us and take an active part in the discussion. How are y'all doing?
I've avoided the plague so far. So
that is a good positive thing. A positive thing. Yes.
My son's been sick all day, which has been so fun.
Just been working a lot of overtime.
Well, I spent all yesterday cooking all sorts of delectable smoked goods for my nephew who had a Super Bowl party. So I made pulled pork and smoked queso and smoked cream cheese and smoked crab for myself. And Jordan got some too.
I did. It was great.
And so
I might be biased though.
I made all kinds of food. I think my smoker ran from 9:30 p.m. on Saturday night until about 4:00 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. So
yeah, it actually gave me a little bit of a fright because I heard a slam out in the backyard at late at night.
Oh no!
And I'm just like, what? And I'm like, Bill.
It freaked me out because I'm standing out in the backyard in the pitch black, looking at my phone.
Well, that's why I was also kind of freaking out because I didn't see any lights, and so I'm just sitting there like, all right, either Bill's smoking something, or we have an intruder who's tripping over stuff.
I still have I still have to fix the light on the back porch. I just need to get a proper footstool and screwdriver type device so that I can remove the stuff that's around where the light bulb goes. But it's frustrating. But yeah, so it was a interesting and fun weekend spent with just spent cooking for my nephew and his family, and apparently it went over well at his party. So I was very glad to hear it.
Neat.
And this was just an offer I sent out. This wasn't like him saying, "Hey, I want you to do all this for me." It was I sent an offer to all my nephews and nieces and said, "Hey, I'm not doing anything for the Super Bowl, but if y'all want, I'd be happy to make all sorts of stuff." And he was the one who responded. So
there you go.
Yep. Okay. Well, the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is made possible by the support of our listeners and patrons. Y'all have been awesome, and we really appreciate you. And y'all may be noticing that was a slightly different Patreon announcement. That's because today we have an announcement. So we are coming up on our 7-year mark. We started this podcast 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is kind of mind blowing when we think about it. Like, it doesn't seem like it's been that long.
Mm-hmm.
I remember how petrified I was for our first episode. And if you go back and listen, you can probably hear it in my voice. But yeah, so after doing this for 7 years, we are all kind of starting to get a bit burned out. We're still enjoying the books. We're still we love the podcast. We love discussing it. but we feel like it's kind of become the time to step away for a little while. We're not planning to completely end the podcast, but we're definitely not going to be putting out episodes every other week. The plan right now is to basically, if Brandon comes out with a new book, which is more often than with most other authors, we'll probably come back and discuss the book. We're not going to rush through to try and finish it in 3 days so that we can do an episode, but we'll come in and we'll do a good, meaty discussion on it. And if one of us gets an idea for a topic, then we'll come in and just chat about it, talk about it, and put out another episode for y'all. And we'll put out announcements on, the fact that we're actually going to be doing another episode coming up. We'll try and let you know on our socials and however else. And if you don't see it, it'll pop up on your podcast feed if you keep subscribed to us. The plan is right now we're going to finish out the 4 main storylines from Wind and Truth. So for the next 4 episodes. And so we still have a few episodes before that shift, before we even hit that 7-year.
We want to hit the 7-year anniversary.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing that I realized is that will put us at episode 184. And even though I'd like to get to 200, guess how far away 184 is from 200? 16. So
it's an important number.
It is.
Yeah. We will let you know more specifics as we get closer to the change. So but we wanted to give you a heads up and just thank you so much for supporting the show, for listening, for being amazing. Y'all are seriously incredible. Interacting with our listeners has been the absolute best part of doing this podcast, in my opinion.
You make me feel like a rock star, and it's kind of crazy.
If it weren't for the fact that Brandon didn't come out with books so often, I'd feel less good about the decision, just because I don't want to stop talking about Brandon books. But I mean, heck, Isles of Emberdark is only a few months away.
That's true.
Oh my goodness, it is. Well,
it's supposed to be this summer, so yeah, it won't be that long. But anyway,
yeah. So this isn't we're going away. This is just we're not going to be doing this bi-weekly.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Or semi-weekly? Wait, which is
bi-weekly?
Bi-weekly. Okay.
Yeah.
Semi-weekly.
I always get it backwards.
Every half week. So
I always get it backwards.
Bi-weekly can actually mean both. It can mean twice a week,
really?
or it's
Okay,
a weird word that
it is
bothers
weird.
me.
I
It
feel
upsets
a lot
me.
better.
It upsets me because I looked it up trying to find the definitive answer, and it was just it can be both, and I was like, I am not okay with this.
Yep, nice and confusing.
So that's my rant. But
Welcome to
I just realized, do we have a Cosmere thing of the week? As I was prepping for this announcement,
I don't know that we did.
hadn't put one
I didn't
together.
prep one.
Okay, well, I want to hit the button anyway. Cosmere thing of the week. Okay, well then let's move on into Sanderson news.
I know there's on Tuesday on TikTok a bunch of Cosmere talkers and myself. I'm going to get there a little bit late at like 7:30 or 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Mhm.
Are going to be doing an epic / Cosmere crossover discussion-y something. I don't know. Anyway, so if you want to watch some Cosmere talkers, I'll be there for part of it at least.
Yeah, definitely check that out.
Yeah, and I will look up who's hosting it because I cannot remember.
Okay.
That will be important for people
It
to
would be
Yes,
important,
indeed.
yes.
No, just go to TikTok. It's there.
follow your nose. It's like
It's
Fruit
easy to
Loops.
find, there's no confusion at all.
TikTok is such a
it's,
small place, and
It's CJ. What is his name on TikTok? It's not Cosmere Junkie. It's
right.
shoot. What is his name?
It is. Where is it?
Cosmere Quandaries. So I
That's
think
the
he's
one.
hosting.
He's been a guest host on here before.
Yeah, I think he's the one who's hosting it.
Okay.
So
Well, cool. So check that out.
Yep.
Well, then now let's move on into Cosmere news. Okay. So
Do you wanna
first
hit the
off,
sounder again.
no, because it's
Okay,
it's
just-
over. It's done. The moment is past, Jordan. Leave it. Move on. So Ghost Bloods, the pre-writing is at 65%. And that is for the whole trilogy. But he is going to be spending a lot more focus in that on what happens in book 1. And then between the books, he'll go back and do a little bit more outlining and fleshing it out as he does that. Moment Zero revisions are still stalled at 95%. And Song Rise, which is Jancy's Skyward Legacy book 2, is also kind of sticking at 8%. Writing lectures number 2 and 3 are live on Brandon's YouTube channel. Brandon does suggest number 2 if you want to give one a try just to sort of see what they're like. He said it's a really strong one. It's about building the structure of a plot. There are 2 other ways to actually go through that. They're also releasing blog posts based on the notes of one of his employees who's taking notes at each of the lectures. And then they'll post those notes or a blog post based around those notes. And then also they're going to be releasing an audio version of the lectures in a podcast form. So if you miss us, there's something else that you can go check out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he didn't mention the name of the podcast when he was telling us this in the news, and nobody
tell us
seems
where
to...
it's going to be, at least, or is this like an Amy situation?
It's just on all your podcast apps. So
will it be on Cosmere Quandaries?
No.
Who are you? You see why I'm burned out, folks? This is what I got to deal with. StoryCon is going to be at the Salt Palace at the end of this month from February 21st and 22nd. And the Dragonsteel team is going to be there, but Brandon will not be. So definitely check that out if you're in the area and it's something that interests you. We finally know why some of the story deck cards have been so hard to find. So Story Deck, remember, is the trading cards that Brandon put out at Dragonsteel Nexus this year. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have had trouble finding the higher numbered, what are they called? Heralds and the higher numbered story cards. And what happened is apparently the printer mistakenly put several cards onto the rare set of cards. And so fewer of them were actually printed.
So I feel better about my lack of Herald 7 and 9.
Yep, and those are on the rare. So Brandon has said that they are trying to find a way to print more of these and inject them into the population somehow. And so for people who are wanting to buy like a full set or going to eBay to buy these things, be aware that these will hopefully become more common soon. So don't necessarily go breaking the bank and spending $200 for a complete set or something like that.
Yeah.
To those of you who are scalping, my apologies, but honestly, no, because you know better and you know what you did. So yeah, apparently it was like cards 42 through 56 were on the rarer ones, as well as some of the higher heralds. Brandon is apparently also busy working with some Hollywood stuff. He said it's nothing super exciting right now, maybe someday, but right now it's not really anything to work up.
That's exactly what someone who has something exciting going on would say.
Yes,
it also would make sense with going back to when we had discussed, like when he broke down all the steps that Hollywood stuff has to go through. And so, I mean, just looking at it that way, it could be way far back in the process.
Yeah. It could be let's see if we want to write a script or consider writing a script for this.
Yeah.
He just referred to it as Hollywood stuff. So who knows? Who knows what
it's doing?
Who knows what Hollywood's even doing right now? So,
yeah.
Okay. Should we move on into the discussion?
Indeed. Sure.
Okay. So, we've got our 2 boys, Kaladin and Szeth. Each of them kind of have their own things. So we start off with Kaladin at Urithiru.
Mm-hmm.
And Kaladin's feeling better than he has in a long time. He's like, it's really interesting. It's the whole just Kaladin feels good.
And he's kind of almost waiting for the shoe to drop a little bit, but he's also like,
he's like,
this is how I'm supposed to feel, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
This is weird because like there's a moment where he sees Adolin and Shallan and he's happy for them, and he's like, I think this is how normal people feel about this kind of stuff like that. And he's just like, this is weird, but good, but weird.
It's like having gone through some major depressive episodes, it's really interesting when you actually find a way to normal and you just stop and you're just like, this is what it feels like for you all the time? What the heck?
It's like, no wonder you're not tired like I am. What?
But it's just like, when you're drowning and you suddenly get that breath, it feels amazing. When you're starving and you suddenly get a bite of food, nothing has ever tasted better. And it's just like, oh, this is incredible. And that's sort of where he is. He's just sort of loving being happy.
Well, it's 'cause he finally put down that weight. The thing that which what I like is it's difficult to do one of these things without it being trite, because you worry if you do it like too much, it's like, oh, this sort of just minimizes, because like this isn't like Shalon's issues where it's like there's some magical issues going on with what her issues are. So it's not a perfect one-to-one, but Kaladin is expressly depressive. Like it's just normal depression, which is a weird sentence, but a true one. And so
it's also the kind of thing, like when you have somebody who has Stormlight healing, you think, oh, doesn't that heal it? But the way that Stormlight works is there's a very much, a perception based on it. And when you have been
always depressed, then that's
life,
what you think the bar is.
Who you feel you are. It's like his scars not healing. That's a part of it. That's a symbol of it. That's like, it's just, he feels like this is who he is. And so this isn't something that heals because he is reverting to his cognitive self.
Yeah.
And so I just thought it was really well done with this particular part of it.
And I think having had so much time, especially the slog that Rhythm of War was, like all of the emotional stuff that Kaladin was going through and all of the and the things he was working through and everything. And this is only like 2 days after Rhythm of War. So he's finally like coming out of that and going, oh, okay, I really am. I've got this.
I think it's the next day.
I could have sworn it was
because
like
this is day one.
Okay.
And the
anyway,
the
it's
pact
like
was
right
made
after,
at the end of Rhythm.
so.
Yeah. So like
this I guess that is that you got 10 days on the clock. Yeah.
Like typically it's hard to figure out the timeline, but this one it's pretty solidly laid out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. It's like right there. You don't get to breathe.
Now he's walking around Eurythea just, feeling pretty good about stuff. And Syl is kind of evolving as well. And the shippers rejoiced because suddenly Syl is full-sized and normal colored. And like, she's
changing
not
her
just
clothes
blue
and doing,
and flirting and
I still don't know how I feel about it, but okay.
Teasing him.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of a very interesting, okay, so this is where you're going, Brandon.
Okay.
But
it's interesting, but with Syl, just because unlike a lot, like she can vary her size, and it's one of those things. I think it's also it feels very natural for her to start experimenting with what if I was just human sized, and I think for her it also would sort of feel like for her becoming more of. Well, an adult feels like the wrong word for a spren, but she associates being more childlike with being like a wind spren. So I think for her mentally, she sort of, I want to put on my big kid pants sort of thing.
Yeah. Step up into my authority and my experience and
she actually seems to be actively trying to do this. It's not necessarily something you would expect, but she's just like, I want to be more. Kaladin makes me more, and I want to be more and more and more. I want to see how far I can go. I want to push myself.
I mean, she's trying to learn how to write. She's wanting to be his scribe and all these different things like that too.
It's really fascinating and kind of just very tender, very touching that she wants to be this for him. Like they really are each other's best support, and rather than thinking, how can I lean on him? She's like, how can I make it so that he can lean on me? And it's a very healthy attitude in any sort of relationship, romantic or otherwise, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
is like, rather than focusing on how they can help you, you focus on how you can help them, and they do the same. And
hopefully you're both just supporting each other by each equally trying to assist the other person.
and it's just it's really very, very positive.
It's also kind of a poignant thing, just because when we start getting to Shinovar, as Kaladin is studying the what's the word I'm looking for?
Wave Kings?
The flora.
The flora,
Yeah, that because he's trying to figure out how are these things not just blown over by the high storm. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And he starts learning, it's like, well, their root systems all intertangle and they support each other, type of thing. And it's just kind of symbolic.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, like I said, Kaladin's sort of Kaladining around Urithiru, talking to various people and, running errands and interacting with his men and recognizing his men as they've kind of evolved into their new role since he stepped down, which is,
and he's like, they'll be okay. Either way, they will be okay.
Yeah. And I've honestly forgotten the order of most of these things, so I'm just gonna sort of hit them.
So I think he talks to Wit, and then he ends up talking. Like, he sees his family, he talks to Wit, then he sees his men.
Well, and what I'm saying is we don't need to focus on, because most of these are minor in the greater scheme of what happens. At one point, he does have a conversation with Dalinar, at which point Dalinar's like, so my son is running House Kalin. Renarin has no interest in ruling. Yasna is running Alethkar in exile. And Elhokar is dead. So I kind of need an heir to Urithiru.
So it's you. Yeah. And then I think after him, it's like this random Stone Ward who I can't remember.
It was the Stone Warden who swore the fourth ideal.
Yeah. Was the backup
Stone
for
Ward.
The one that we end up meeting that's called what was the nickname they had for him?
Oh goodness, I don't remember.
They deployed him like he was a mobile bulwark platform.
Oh, considering what he can do, yeah.
I just remember the way Sigil referred to him. He sounded more like War Machine type stuff than an actual human. And I don't mean the character from Marvel. I mean like an actual war machine. Like
lowercase war machine.
Yes.
Yeah. Machine of war.
A siege engine.
Siege engine. That's the word.
There we go. But no, I mean,
did it.
Seeing what Stone Wards can do, yeah, they're a force unto themselves,
both offensively and defensively. But yeah, so, and basically in the end, Dalinar says, "Hey, I need you to go off, and Szeth is going on a vision quest, and I need you to supervise him
and try and fix Ishar and."
And help Szeth too.
Help Szeth with that
barely
too.
Barely an inconvenience.
No pressure. Could you save the world?
Just do it over there by yourself with Szeth. Just handle that. Okay.
Yeah. It's like, we're not going to send any help with you. We're just going to send you.
Just you.
Szeth. Who could be a help, but maybe not.
Yeah.
And so they basically, they go off on their outing. So let's focus mostly on their time in Shinovar.
Okay.
Because I think that's kind of the meat of their story.
Which that's the thing, we refer to it as Kaladin and Szeth's road trip, but in reality it's Kaladin, Szeth, Syl, Nightblood, and
12124.
Yes, I'm sure. Wait, what number was it? It's not very memorable.
I think it's 12124.
Speaking of, by the way, somebody I saw on Reddit, and I thought this was amazing, is they were talking about how the initials of the first 5 books kind of make a Ketek, but they actually didn't. And it, rather than being Knights of Wind and Truth, it just became Wind and Truth. Somebody chimed in and said, "I just want to point out that to make it a Ketek, you could just call the book Kaladin's One-Way Trip." And I mean, it kind of gives away the ending, but still, it's.
I don't like it. Nope.
I don't remember who said that on Reddit, but whoever Redditor, if you hear this, that was amazing. You have my highest praise. But yeah, so they start exploring. They end up
trying to bond over stew.
Yeah. I love that Kaladin brings up stew.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is the thing that saved Bridge 4.
Yeah, that was the spark that got them to all kind of bond.
He and Rock and Teft were kind of this core group that they were the first people that he had, and Rock could make stew, and Kaladin said, let's create something that people can gather around, and stew is perfect for that.
Yeah.
I mean, have y'all ever read the book Stone Soup? It's kind of brilliant. And Stone Soup was a children's. Stone Soup was a children's book that I read when I was a kid, where this hustler came into town with a rock. Like, he had nothing, and he was asking people for food, and they were saying no. And he made he put a rock in a pot, and people said, "Well, what are you making?" He said, "I'm making stone soup."
Why does stews always come back to rock?
Yeah. Anyway, but people come around, and they they're fascinated, and so one of them will add vegetables, and they add potatoes, and make a wonderful feast.
There you go.
But it's just, it was a book I remember reading when I was a kid. So
you don't think there's a chance that that is the origin of Rock's name, do you?
That'd be hilarious.
Oh man,
I sincerely doubt it, but
it would be funny if it was.
We can't rule it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. But yeah, so
I mean, there's also all the stuff going on with Kaladin and the wind.
Yes, right. So Kaladin just is hearing this voice that he hasn't really heard before, and of course everyone immediately is all the readers are just speculating, what is this voice? What is this? This is new. Something's different, and it's it. I'm still not entirely sure. I have a basic idea of it because we end up learning that this is the voice of the wind, which is one of the three primal forces, or the two. Three primal forces, because there's the wind, there's the earth, and there's the night, the stone, and the night, and
all very primal concepts.
Exactly, just when you have a primitive Neolithic culture, these are the things that have meaning, and so
the biggest impacts on them,
in a world that is influenced by the cognitive perceptions of things around them, this type of thing would naturally sprout. And just over time, especially when you have physical manifestations of these concepts that they've come up with, that legend grows and they get bigger and develop. But the thing that's really interesting that we find out later is just essentially, though, this is one of the primal forces of Roshar.
Yeah.
And it's kind of watching Kaladin and guiding him. I'm trying to remember the reason what is the reason that it starts speaking? Is it because of the death of Race, or? I think it was.
I thought so.
I think that's what it was. Is that kind of broke something?
And we
Race was sort of holding it back.
Yeah. And now Taravangian's focusing on other stuff, and so this is just sort of something that kind of
it's finally able to
it's been muffled for so long, and it's just reaching.
And I mean, I feel like there were hints that Kaladin had kind of talked to it before, or kind of gotten hints from it.
Yeah.
But it's much more in his face now than it had.
Well, and it's it's hard to figure out where Syl begins and this wind entity, his influence on his early life, begins. Just because
the wind,
she was a wind spren, and so
yeah. And I mean, for all we know, the wind guided Syl to him. We don't know, and she wouldn't know because she doesn't remember too well because she was just kind of floating. Yeah.
The thing that was interesting about the wind is it's simultaneously very useful and also completely useless at the same time.
It's just
Because it itself doesn't have much of a mind.
Mhm.
And so it's the problem of, it can give him some insights, but it's sort of, it's just like, I wasn't fully present yet. And that was the other thing, when you find out, like, Venli, when she's like talking to the stones, trying to, learn history. And she's like, how long ago was that? They're like, oh, not too long ago. And it's the same thing with, like Nightblood. It's like they don't have a concept of time.
Yeah, it doesn't work the same for them.
And so they're like, I'm trying.
They're trying to communicate, but you're talking through very different filters of understanding, and it just doesn't translate as well. Yeah. And he starts working on his flute work too. He's trying.
Yes.
Apparently, he's pretty bad at the beginning. Apparently, but that's fair. But then he does improve.
But it's the thing that's really interesting is, again, Kaladin is like, kind of literally, he is storm blessed. He is touched by the wind, and it affects his practice and his playing, and it, like, how he learns. Like, he is still very, very new, but there is something instinctive about it to him.
Yeah, I feel like there was a line or something where it said, like, the song he starts trying to play when they're out sitting in Shinovar, like the first or second night, and he starts playing on his flute, and Syl's like, "Oh, that was." Somebody tells him that that's the song, that's like the rhythms of the wind, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And it's familiar.
Well, and the thing that was interesting about it is because he tied it to his stew making, because he was getting frustrated with how bad it sounds. And he then, like, he finally, like, gets to the point where he's like, oh, because he has the moment where, because he hates how it tastes, and Szeth comes and it's like, so you made this? And he's like, yeah. And it's like, I wouldn't be opposed to you doing that again. And which is like the highest praise you could possibly get from Szeth on anything. And he's just like, wait, really?
Kaladin's been trying to relate to Szeth, and Szeth is just having absolutely none of it. And Kaladin does get a little bit discouraged. He's just like, everything I say, he just shuts me down.
It's like, what am I supposed to say to him? Yeah.
But not realizing that, even if he's not visually responding or visibly responding, his words are having some sort of effect. Szeth is noticing, and Szeth needs to process it in his own time. And it's like, you can't just go up to someone, say, "Hi, you're great," and they're fixed. Like, it'd be great if you could.
I tried.
Because when you're the person who's being fixed, you need to know that they actually care about you.
You need to be able to trust them.
And so you just have to invest the time.
And a lot of times in early therapy, that's kind of what the therapist is doing, is just sort of establishing themselves as someone you can trust to tell them things. Because a lot of times in therapy, people going in don't. They're not going to trust them. That's why they've chosen to come to therapy, because they're like, I need help. I need help, but these walls are still here.
Yeah.
So
we can also talk about that.
What?
Oh,
the word therapy.
Who was it that gives him Kaladin that word even?
I think Hoyd.
Is it Hoyd? Okay, that's right. Because I was like, I don't think it's
because honestly, no one else could give it to him, and I still felt like it was a bit shoehorned in.
We've had this discussion, just where it's sort of the same problem that, and this is where I'm going to be horribly inconsistent, of homicidal hat trick.
Yep.
Where for some people,
Mistborn,
it's hilarious. Okay. And for other people, it rips them right out of the story.
Yep.
And for me, homicidal hat trick, it worked. I think partially because it was just one sentence. And it fit to the thing. Whereas the word therapy just doesn't feel right in this world yet.
It feels a bit too modern. I know it's like got ancient roots in the word, but it's just a word that is commonly used in the modern vernacular to the point where it just fits our time period more, and it kind of pulled me out of the story, especially at the end when he says, "No, I'm his therapist." Oh my gosh, like
It was kind of cringe.
There was
Like,
there was another way to say it.
It was.
I
I
don't know.
enjoyed it, but I also was like, okay, yeah, it's what it is. We're just.
Yeah.
Gonna
I
go with
also I won't sit here and claim, well, what word would you have used? And to which my answer is, I've been around this particular bend a bit. I can't think of a word that really works. And to me, it's more a sign of maybe we should have just
Said
avoided
friend.
it.
I'm his friend.
Like, even friend would have been better.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, and in my opinion, I suspect that is just a Brandonism that without Moshe will just, it's the kind of writing that Brandon does. I feel like that's one of the words that Moshe would have pushed back on, and it may have been different, but who knows?
We don't know. So yeah.
Yeah, because either way, it's a hypothetical we can't get an answer to.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it just, I don't know. It pulled me a little out of it as well.
So
Not so much that it ruined the story. But
yeah.
Right.
It didn't ruin it, but it's that little thing here and there. It's just like how Bill Hunt is just awesome.
Lift in awesome. Yep.
Yeah.
It just doesn't quite fit for me in this world.
Mm-hmm.
What were your guys' thoughts about all the backstory stuff with Szeth?
Oh, I thought that was good.
It was.
I thought that was very
I enjoyed
interesting.
it. His sister was she threw me for a loop a little bit. Like, she got really jaded by the end of it. And I mean, I can't blame her.
Which I can totally see how that would come about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just.
I mean, she starts out where she's not as worried about some of the things that he is.
Well, she starts off very supportive of Szeth, like very affectionate towards Szeth.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Szeth has some obsessive tendencies.
Yeah.
And what happens is, as time goes on, his decisions start to affect her more and more and more, and it feels like she is becoming less and less and less important within her family. And so she does build some resentment about it. Like, she still loves her brother, but
she really wishes all of this hadn't happened and thrown everything off and messed up her life and just everything. She can see the steps. And
those two emotions can cause some severe cognitive dissonance. And so, even as she's seeing it, she's just, they're like, that resentment builds, but you still love your brother, and you know that it shouldn't build, and so you resent that it spirals.
Well, it reminds. I have a cousin who they have a child who's very far on the autism spectrum, and so much so where their life has to kind of revolve around it in some way, shape, or form, and you can just see, his siblings love him. But at the same time, they can't help but notice that, they don't get attention. And it's just a hard balancing act that you have to do, because this other person has some special needs.
And the parents have to make a very hard decision, because it's like, should I spend as much time with this child to give them as normal a life as possible? Or should I divide my attention and give none of them a fully, there's just
how do you
not
balance
enough
it,
resources to go around, and it's a hard decision. It's a hard, impossible situation.
Well, and you look at this situation in particular, because you also have the dynamic of where Szeth starts to have some, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, he's holding some stuff in as well, because he's very bothered by the fact that his parents kind of manipulated him with, like, the first stone into giving the answer they wanted.
Yeah, because he was like, that feels wrong to do it because it's not how the rules are supposed to be done. And they're like, we're going to just make it easier for everybody if you just bend that rule.
Well, and as a child, this is particularly confusing because your parents are the ones who've taught you these rules.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's
then you
extra
see
strict
them,
about them. Yeah.
and he is absolutely extra strict about them. And so when you see them bending rules, there's almost a feeling of betrayal. Like, I'm not saying they did betray him, but it can manifest like that to you if you see it.
Because I mean,
You know?
he was still at that age where he's building like his core values and morals and stuff. And then
Mhm.
here's his parents going, yeah, we taught you this and everybody around you has taught you this moral, but we're going to just tweak it
Yeah.
for our convenience.
Mhm.
And
that's the thing,
going to mess him up.
It is for their convenience.
Mhm.
Like he can easily look at it and say, this is for a selfish reason.
Yeah.
And
Now it's a good selfish reason.
It is.
Yeah.
I don't want to uproot
Yeah.
our entire family.
well, and the
For
other
this.
thing is like the parents have their own beliefs and the severity, like the strictness that they hold themselves to. Like they've taught him this belief system, but they have grown into it and determined how they feel about it.
Yeah,
But
there are
all-
different
but-
levels of orthodox, I guess. Is that a good word for that?
Orthodox is good. But Szeth, he is so externally based. He bases so much on what other people see and think and tell him. He has so little trust in his own decisions.
Mhm.
And so he places that burden on them. And when they're not as consistent as he wants them to be, it's
It throws
unsettling.
everything off for
It's
him. Yeah.
it's completely unsettling. And then he goes through the traumatic event of being attacked. And when he goes out trying to find his sheep,
Yeah. Find Molly.
and in an act of self-defense, he commits the ultimate crime, like the unforgivable sin.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's trauma. That is
So much trauma.
absolute trauma. Both
Mhm.
like not just the attack.
Welcome to Roshar.
Like being attacked would have been traumatic enough, but then it's rough.
The more
it's
I
rough.
reading it, I was like, oh, you poor. I mean, I know who you grow into, but oh my goodness, you poor thing.
But now you start to see, I see why you grew into this.
Mm-hmm. And then, like, the more you see the different people who were influencing him and all that stuff, I'm like, oh my goodness, will you stop messing him up? Stop
Your
it.
heart just breaks for Szeth.
Mm-hmm. Which is not something you would have expected from book one Szeth. Because you're just like,
well, no, because
he's this
he was
terrible
almost
person.
he was almost bloodthirsty.
Mhm.
Which
he had just shut down his emotions at that point.
Oh, yeah.
It was the only way he could cope with what he was going through.
Mm-hmm.
When he got to the point where after Taravangian got his oath stone and he was forced to go on just this absolute killing spree, where he started to get mad at the people he was killing.
Right.
It's like,
for
stop
not
being
strong
so
enough to beat
helpless.
him.
You need to kill me.
Well, because he wants to die, but because he is so bound to this oath, he can't allow himself to. He forces himself.
I mean, and having seen Child Szeth and then seeing the oath stone and everything else, it makes so much more sense why he has such a huge freak out when he realizes that no, he was never truthless. He wasn't wrong. And that just flips everything on him. And you're like, oh yeah, that explains why you had a complete breakdown. Just whoop, off the crazy end. Because
I've got a question.
Also,
go ahead.
I was going to say, it also makes sense why Nail, especially with his particular misinterpretation of what the Skybreakers are supposed to be, was so enamored with him. It's like, man, you stuck to your guns like throughout.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what a Skybreaker is supposed to be, is that they at least his form of Skybreaker. They follow the law. Okay, question. Did either of you, for at least a brief moment until they mentioned the size of it, wonder if the stone that he found was his oath stone? Was the stone that would become his oath stone?
I did not.
That was my immediate thought.
Maybe for a split second, but then I was like, no, that's too big. Because I remember the
Like-
O stone was pretty small. And like my first, I think I was like, is that? But I'm like, but they'd have to like break it down really small, and I can see him freaking out over having
over
a
breaking it,
sacred
yes.
stone being broken down more.
Right. But it's just
So.
when he found it, I was thinking it was just a small rock.
Mm.
And so I was like, is this his O stone? You know, it's just like, is this the but no, it wasn't.
I pictured like a size of a orange or something like not huge, but bigger than his O stone.
But yeah. So another thing that's interesting about Szeth is that over the course of this journey, we see him interacting with his Spren more than we ever have.
Mm-hmm. His Spren's being a lot more talkative.
And how useless his Spren is.
And so
finding out that his Spren is a complete novice and useless in battle was hilarious. And it's like, I found something in the fight with Posen and whoever what was, I forget their name.
I forgot
First
so
of all,
many of the names.
I just want to say Posen is, I don't know why I love saying his name. Maybe it's just because it rhymes with bosun, but
I don't know.
No, it just, I don't know. I love saying Posen. And the edge dancer one, who was just way too arrogant. And it's just one of those things that he's like, it's not much, but I got something for you. And he like throws a spoon.
I know, I saw that and I was like, okay, all the Szeth cosplayers are gonna have a spoon now. Like somebody's gonna have to be dressed up as 12124 and be like holding out a spoon to Szeth, and him just be like, oh my goodness, no.
okay,
doing his iconic post. Anyway, that was the
way,
cosplayer in me. Got excited.
You said 12124. I want to talk about this.
Yes.
Do you know what the alphanumeric code for 12124 is?
Not off the top of my head. One is A, so it'd be A, B.
21 is U.
Oh.
24 is X.
Oh.
That makes more sense now.
That is great.
I was doing A, B, A.
That's what I was trying to do. I was thinking, each letter that way. But I mean, but that way, how would you get to 26 if you didn't? Yeah.
1, 21, 24. A, U, X.
Oh, man. That hurts extra.
It's just
him at the end. And
it's just a great little Easter egg that you're like, okay, that's kind of cool, actually.
That is really small.
I know it's jumping ahead, but it's partially also getting to see Ox at the beginning and end of his journey. It's cool because, especially because we also got to see Sigil at the beginning and end of, not the end of his journey, but
a major point in his journey.
Yeah, a major point. And it's one of those things that when they pair up, it's suddenly like, I like this. Like, I like, because they're both coming from very broken places to start.
Yeah.
And because that was our big question. It's like, why would he switch to Skybreaker? What is going on?
I didn't expect it to be so quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I still struggle with seeing Sigil doing the Skybreaker oath, but I can see him picking the Spren, and like sticking with Ox. But it's just,
well, that's the thing.
Well, remember the oaths are and Ox has learned this. The oaths aren't necessarily Nail's oaths.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the part that'll be very
because at this point, Ox has realized this is not
canon.
This is not the original Skybreakers. This is an offshoot. This is a side sect.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing I like about that is, because that's always been something that's like stuck in my craw, is the fact that Nail, who's clearly insane, has joined up with the supposed rule followers. And it's like, no, you're bending the rules all over the place. And as you start to see why they are the way that they are, it starts to make a lot of sense. I want to talk about the Szeth fights for a little bit.
Let's do
just
it.
because
Okay.
going
You're gonna have to remind me
back in
because I've forgotten a
time-
bunch of details. But go ahead.
Well, but going back in time where we see
Szeth,
like
Szeth does
as
Street
he's being
Fighter.
as he's being honed into this weapon,
Mhm.
it's one of the things you appreciate why Kaladin is this fighting savant, and he's pushed by the wind and all this other stuff, and you see the thing that is in parallel, Szeth, and him the same thing, where he is a fighting savant, and that you see when fight or flight kicks in, his instinct is fight
Yeah.
and freeze, but he pushes past it in actual danger. And so it's the whole thing where Kaladin has that realization, because he starts to realize why they're so similar, but they're still different in important ways. And when he has that realization of he's Tien, if Tien was forced to live my life.
Yeah.
And where it suddenly for him is this huge flip in his understanding. They have that huge heart to heart moment, and then Nail shows up. But
well, the other thing that's cool about that is with that perspective, he's able to see that he actually did save Tien.
Yeah.
I don't know that he recognizes that, but like when you look at it, like if you like when just because you just said this is Tien if he's forced to live Kaladin's life, and Kaladin is able to prevent Tien from having to go through what
he keeps him from being hardened that way. Yeah.
He's unable to save his life in the end, obviously, but while he was alive, he still was able to remain Tien.
Soft and compassionate and his core self as he'd been.
Well, because that's one of the hard, like, it's very interesting with the way Brandon writes things, because one of the hardest things is the fact that as you go through a rough world, there's all these rough questions of what is moral, like we see Kaladin struggle with that when he gets in tight with the singers that he goes on the march with, and he starts having issues because he's like, I can see their perspective, I understand it, and he's having a hard time going back into that soldier mindset.
It's you can't make them the other again when they've been, for lack of a better word, humanized to you. And
it's one of those things that having a nice and compassionate personality, stories like this really highlight what a luxury that actually is. That because and that's what the people like Kaladin and like Szeth are for. They're there to protect everyone else so that they can be compassionate and kind and nice.
Yeah.
That there has to be this rough side of society that does the things that protects the thing that's worth it.
Yeah.
Which is it's one of those hard things about war, is just, this is just unfortunate, but it's necessary.
You have to harden yourself to the act of taking a life.
Someone does.
Yeah, someone does. Yeah, and
there's the pain of that, but there's also you don't want someone who glorifies in it, because that goes into a whole other
thing. Yeah, but then it makes you feel worse for the people who would not have naturally done that, but now they have learned how to because of necessity with being in war or whatever.
Yeah, it's something I wish this book could have explored more. I will say, this book, more so than any other Brandon has written, feels rushed in certain parts, especially towards the end. And I think this and the Dalinar storyline are the ones that suffer the most from it.
Well, I mean, it's a big book, and they're trying to cover a lot.
Well, it's
and
interesting.
And you want to keep the pace up for the storyline, because yes, I would have loved to go more in depth with a lot of the things, but if you had stopped and slowed it down, it would have messed up the pacing, which is the hard part.
It's interesting because there are several moments that feel a little bit more drawn out. Like there are long, slow moments, and then there are other very important moments that are kind of rushed, and so it feels a little bit
frenetic, erratic, just like all over the place.
Frenetic, yeah. Erratic's not the right word, but frenetic, yeah. It's just sort of a stop and go, stop and go, stop and go, which and because you have these moments that sometimes do feel too drawn out, the moments that feel rushed feel needlessly rushed.
Yeah, and it's also just one of those things. It's like, so what's your solution to it? And like the solution is like write another half of a book, like
Have
on
a
a
part
book that's
two?
already probably bigger than Tor ever wanted to publish in the history of their existence.
Yep.
And it's like it might just be one of those things. Like, maybe it's just not a good solution.
It's just hard.
Yeah.
You gotta figure out how to balance it, and there's more things that you could always go more in depth with, because the worlds are so lush and filled with so many details that you could find ways to go way deeper into this or that or the other thing. But you do need, I mean, especially with this one, you're trying to get through the 10-day challenge, and so it's you gotta hurry a little bit.
So should we talk about Szeth's quest to become a Pokemon master?
Yes.
With all the blades.
He's got to catch them all.
He's got to catch them all.
The blades. He's got to fight the gym leaders.
I'm not gonna lie, like thinking about the visual of them like hauling around all these shard blades, I'm like, that's just gotta look ludicrous. So ludicrous. And like anybody from a distance looking at it and going, no, I'm not gonna mess with the guy who's got 6 shard blades just chilling on him. No, not doing it.
Adolin wouldn't see any problem.
No, it's normal.
That's Adolin though, okay? Adolin's gonna be a great time.
You can always have more honors blades.
Always more swords. It's great. Except Maya would get jealous.
Meanwhile, Nightblood's just chatting them all up and having a grand old time.
And learning things. He's growing. I mean, like, I don't know that we'd ever get it, but part of me is curious what conversations the shard blades are having, the honor blades are having with Nightblood, because we don't ever hear them talk, right? It's just Nightblood we're hearing.
Well, and the heralds are cursed with insanity, but the blades may not, and so they may be like, finally someone who's not crazy.
Someone who can hear
me. well
that's it's because these aren't unlike every other. They're not a living blade, because they're
just not true. But they are, because the way that investiture works, and they're
their own
investiture of,
but they're not like Spren.
No.
Yeah, they're their own thing, but it's like, I don't know quite how to classify them, and we haven't seen.
Like, I wonder if only Nightblood can talk to them, because Nightblood's the only thing sentient enough that's close enough to them.
I mean, I think Azure's blade, Azure's blade maybe, but we haven't seen enough of it to know.
Saying Vivina. I see what you're doing.
I was gonna go what's her Azure? That's right.
No, Vivina, not
Anyway.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot, but like, I just think it would need to be an awakened inanimate object.
Which, I mean, there's probably going to be other things that could do it later, but right now I only know of those two.
Now,
I think
a Deadeye's perhaps might be like,
maybe
I could see someone like Maya being able
Maya
to
Lauren.
Yeah, maybe
Mylar Bloom.
Or any of the ones that end up with Adolin and his Power Rangers later. So
yeah,
but
it's just one of those things. It's interesting, and I love the concept of, we see Nightblood actually starting to go through a character arc, because he has that moment where he's like, Szeth, am I I'm a good person, evil? Right? Yeah, and it's like, because I only destroy evil things, right?
Well, it's interesting because he kind of goes through a similar arc as Szeth. Szeth has been begging people to point him, tell him what to do, tell him what is right. And, Nightblood kind of is in the same thing. I am here to destroy evil. Szeth wants to destroy evil, but he is used in some very, very evil ways.
Well, and just like Szeth, not just like Szeth, but as far as how Szeth interprets it, he doesn't get to choose where he's pointed.
Yeah.
And suddenly are starting to get the actual horror of being a sentient inanimate object.
Because I mean, there's so many, you don't know how many people have picked him up and then gotten themselves killed when they may not have been a great person, but they probably didn't deserve that kind of end.
Well, and that's the thing is like for him, the only ones who can pick him up are those who are truly pure in heart, like by his estimation,
by his standards. Yeah.
And that is an impossibly strict measure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then you have the what I love about it, because it also contrasts where, because look, I mean, we have almost 7 years worth of episodes of our joke talking about the Eldritch Puppy, and we finally got to see the cognitive version of Nightblood. And whilst I still say Eldritch Puppy is the way better choice, I might be biased. I do love the concept that Nightblood sees himself as like this paladinic sword of justice.
He's like,
and
yes,
just gleaming and shivering.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm burdened with glorious purpose.
Yes.
Basically the opposite of his appearance in the physical realm, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, and I love it because there's like a vote where he's like, he's like, don't I always look like that? Like, just like he has no concept of what he looks like.
I mean, he doesn't have eyes. So
yeah.
What's he supposed to do?
And so he technically can only see his cognitive self.
Yeah.
Because his cognitive self is himself in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
So
that fight in particular was so interesting because one,
Which
fight? Broke all the fight in the cognitive realm with Posen and the Edge Dancer. It was so interesting because on one hand, they are blatantly cheating according to whatever the rules that they're supposed to be following.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, you're just like, this is terrifying. He's fighting an Elt's Caller and an Edge Dancer, but the Elt's Caller is the scary one. Because that, like, we actually haven't seen Elt's Callers do a lot of Elt's calling. Because it's just...
Yeah, Yasna typically is only doing
soul casting.
Yeah. And we're getting a guy who's been practicing with the Elt's Caller blade for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And so, going to be far better at it than Yasna is.
Yeah.
And so at first you're like, oh crap, what's he going to do? And then he sits there the entire time. And then you remember he is a really old man. And so he's kind of just sitting there because that's all, even with Stormlight, that's really all he can do. Like, he's not a swordsman. He's a scholar, which, fits for an Elt's Caller.
Yep.
And so it's still 2v1, and Zess having to pull out every trick in the book to fight. And it's one of those things that when it happens, you're like, oh my goodness, the fact that he falls on his own sword just to be like, all right, you want this blade? Let's see if you can Elt's Call your way back. You're just like, I can't believe he would do to that. But then when you realize, oh, Ishar has made his own, frankly, fused.
Yeah.
But it suddenly makes sense why he'd be willing to go for a self-sacrifice play. It doesn't mean anything to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's far more interesting to see if the student that you honed into a weapon can finally do what he needs to do.
All right. On that note, we should probably take a break.
Oh, okay. Good point.
So, all right. We will be back in just a bit. And we're back. Okay. So we were talking about Szeth's journey to collect all of the various honor blades and fight all of the various shamans.
Yeah.
The stone shamans. And it's just, it's a really interesting, concept of like, he's kind of doing the same thing he did back when he, before he became truthless. He's going through it. He has to fight all of the various shamans at each of the, what do they call it? Shrines?
Yes.
Shrines, temples.
I feel like it's shrines.
Places. I think it is shrines, but yeah, and it kind of mirrors it, through as he's doing it, his flashbacks kind of mirror it.
Which works. I was going to say it works well with, getting the flashbacks to just go boom, 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 just kind of do each of those.
Well, and
monasteries.
Monasteries? Okay.
That's right. And it's particularly interesting because, as he mentions towards the end of Rhythm of War, his father is one of these shamans. His father is supposed to have Ishar's honor blade.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That was something that was interesting looking back, because it keeps coming back to the problem for Szeth of him asking, so who do I, who's the person that knows all the answers that I can reach out to and they can tell me what to do, because he doesn't want to make decisions.
Yep. He's worried about making that decision.
And so it's like and so at first it's like, well, this is a stone shaman. I of course can listen to them. And then he starts seeing that the stone shamans don't agree and they're hearing this voice. And
the voice
suddenly,
is freaky.
Yeah. And suddenly, as it's just going down, and then he gets to know them a lot better, and he sees some of them aren't very good about, not abusing their power and just taking cups and stuff like that. And he's like,
the voice
is not what I wanted.
The voice is also a little bit confusing because Kaladin is also hearing a voice.
Yeah.
And so my brain, when I first heard this, I was like, oh, they're hearing the same voice.
So I assumed, just because we were told, I assumed it was the Unmade that we thought had overtaken Shinovar. And then it turns out the Unmade was Ishar. So.
Well, and at one point I actually thought that the Unmade, when they saw it, my brain interpreted it as, oh no, it's Syatanat. What's going on? What are you doing here?
I just remember I got really confused because I was rushing through reading a lot of these sections, and so I was like extra confused. Did not help.
Yeah, going through my review, in particular the stuff, because I'm like, I need to restudy up on Ishar in particular.
Yeah.
Because some of that stuff was a little bit confusing at the end, and again, we're bouncing around, and some of the Ishar stuff in particular was very telling.
Yeah.
Although that's jumping ahead a bit. 'Cause, like, when Nail joins the party, he is the ultimate buzzkill.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yes. Well, he's actively attempting to undo the work that Kaladin has done with Szeth.
Because he's actively undid all the work I've done with Szeth.
It's like, how could you? I was making progress, and you just wiped it all out.
Well, that can happen.
Nail feels the exact same way.
Yeah, it's like, you're corrupting him. You're corrupting him. They can't agree on
the Spider-Man meme.
And they're both certain that they're right.
Well, and just when it's like, nope, you have to fight the one with the Skybreaker honor blade. Them's the rules. And it's like, well, that's freaking not fair. And so Kaladin has to fight dirty. Goes for emotional damage.
Emotional damage.
But he does it with the flute. And it's nice to see that finally, like, because it's like you'll be ready once the music, once the wind returns your songs back to you. And it's interesting because it implies that Hoyd had already been in contact with the wind back in. Was it the first book that he did that?
He does the song, or he does the story with the flute.
Yeah, and it's the sound keeps bouncing back. Yes. Okay, it is the first book. And it implies that Hoyd already somehow could do that with the wind, even in its
Well, I suspect that because Hoyd was with them when they came to Roshar the first time, right? When the humans came. So he would have had a chance to communicate with the wind way back then. And so even if the wind is kind of in a diminished, subdued sort of state now, he would have known how to interact with it easier.
Right.
I think.
It's an old friend. It was just, it's one of those, it's interesting looking back at that in particular thing. And I do like that they get Nail on their side, and when they finally go to Ashar's just like clicking his tongue at them like a disapproving teacher. It's like, oh great, you ruined a herald too.
Look what you broke. You broke all the things.
That was one of my best ones.
Mhm.
But it's okay. So Ishar, like we all I don't know of anyone who predicted that Ishar was the Unmade.
Nope.
No.
Because obviously he's not actually unmade, but you know.
Well, and that's the thing.
But-
We've got unreliable narrators.
Yes, a
Mhm.
lot of them.
Yeah.
I definitely didn't have in the cards. He found a way to make sure that them swearing ideals around him wouldn't corrupt his judgment again.
Well, because that happened to him once, and so he's just
He's
like,
like, nope, not doing that.
Well, it's one of those things. It makes sense in retrospect. This is the guy who forged the Oath Pact. There's no one who understands bondsmithing like this guy.
mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
But
like
then
he
you find out-
treated Dalinar like a child, like
Yeah.
in their fight.
Like, and if it hadn't been for Nightblood, things were going to go very bad very quick.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing that was interesting about it is the fact that we find out that he took upon him like the agony
The
of all
madness.
the
Except for Tom.
yeah.
Well, because Talon didn't have it.
And
Talon's
suddenly,
madness is very different from the rest of theirs.
yeah, his is actual PTSD of being
Mhm.
tortured for.
Well, I mean,
millennia.
I feel like they all have PTSD, but
yes,
Paton's is worse, probably.
Right, but theirs comes from breaking. But they also have theirs from breaking oaths, which Talon never did.
well, and
Yeah.
the fact that he apparently went to the Well of Control, which was Odium's perpendicularity, and took up some of Odium's influence apparently
mm-hmm.
to help fuel some of this.
Oh, that's right.
It's kind of a throwaway line,
Yeah.
but you find out that he's got some odium in him. It's like, okay, now I know you're crazy. There's no way that was a good
He
idea.
literally
was
drank
bad.
the Kool-Aid,
Yeah,
the magic Kool-Aid.
You drank the hate aid.
yeah, haterade.
Hater. Ah, there we go.
And so you see that, and it's interesting because you're finding out Ishar is way more insane than you ever thought, way more crazy prepared than we thought as narratively. Then we have all the stuff with the well, which, boy, that's a MacGuffin that's going to be coming back. I mean, first of all, okay, this is the part I forgot entirely. Do you guys remember where the well is?
Mm-hmm.
Odiums.
So it's at the Shattered Plains.
It's at the Shattered Plains beneath.
It's underneath one of the.
Beneath Narak.
Is it under Narak? Okay.
Yes. Well, do you remember the thing about the fourth moon? Because I had forgotten about this.
Oh yeah,
Wait.
I forgot there was a fourth moon.
So apparently, I had to reread this, and I'm like, holy crap! Like it all came flooding back to me. There were 4 moons on Roshar originally, before the shattering and everything. They had irregular orbits, and one of them, but I believe, because we get this, I think that was from Dalinar that we learned this, don't we?
I don't.
As he's looking back through the histories. I can't remember.
I thought it was
I don't
through.
I would think Yasna probably would be the one who would be.
No.
I was thinking it was through Tanavest's memory.
Yes, yeah, and so, but there were 4 moons. It's clear, and they're there before Tanavest and Cultivation ever arrived there, and it's clear that they were put there purposely put there, but they had wild orbits until one of them finally got hurled at Roshar, crashed into the Shattered Plains, and that's well, but it's made out of a material that apparently hides whatever is there from even shards. Something above aluminum.
Duralumin. No.
Well, I actually wonder if because we know Roshar was made by Adonalcium.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if maybe this moon was made out of Nalcium's god metal.
Hmm.
And that's why it interferes with Shard's ability to see around it.
Or
And
like a Dawn
apparently,
Shard metal or something, like
yeah,
something that predates.
something
Yeah.
something primal though. And apparently the Sleepless use this metal to help, like that's how they sort of do their stuff around Roshar without the shards noticing. Like, it was one of these things, like I'm reading it through and I'm like, oh man, there was way too much stuff going on. I gotta
There's so much. There's just a lot of everything.
I gotta re-examine these chapters because holy crap, there's a lot of lore getting dumped here. Yeah, I forgot about that. So I don't remember how Ishar found the Odium well, but somehow he did. Used it to supercharge him so he could do more stuff, and then he started experimenting on Spren because he's like, oh, that'd be the perfect soldiers.
The island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah.
So he was doing it to make them soldiers, is that right?
Yeah, because humans were too unreliable, whereas Spren stick to single ideals.
Their ideals and okay. Because I
rigid.
somehow got it into my
can't
head.
Be killed by shard blades.
Yeah. I somehow got it into my head that he was trying to fix what happened with Bod or Mishram being trapped. But apparently that's not what it was. So I remember that wrong.
Well, apparently that well lets you connect to things. Like it has an inherent power to connect because Ba Mishram used it to connect to the singer so that she could give them forms of power.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm remembering is that.
Yeah, and then Ishar used it to connect himself to Shinovar itself, which is what led to the Spren. Like the Spren don't show up in Shinovar
as much.
Well, until we see, them flowing towards his, like the river of Spren.
Yeah,
the river. Of
well,
dreams.
That's the thing is when everything's coming to a head, and they're trying to make Szeth into the Herald, which Ishar's version of heralds they're more like fused and they're horrifying. Because it's like, oh wow, you've speed run the fused insanity thing. That's great, good work.
Yeah,
and partially it's because he's influenced by odium, so which I guess that still makes it more like the fused. And just what a disaster that all is, and the fact that two guys have just sworn the fifth ideal right next to him have done jack squat to change his mind. And then it's when he finally gets tired of Kaladin preaching to him, he's like, okay, feel what I am putting up with. And he connects him for a moment just so that he can feel the agony.
Well, it's sort of like when Odium overwhelms Dalinar with his presence. And he's just like, look what I am, you puny insect. And Ishar does something similar, but it's just like, look what I have been dealing with, what I have been going through.
Well, and it's very similar because Dalinar had to be given the respite so that he could actually heal and become a better man, but he needed to slowly be reintroduced to who he was so that he could withstand that moment, so that it wasn't too much. Kaladin is sort of the reverse, where he's been experiencing this his entire life, so that when he gets hit with the weight of the world on his shoulders, he's like well, because it wasn't nothing, because that's the thing is he admits it's way worse than his own depression. It's like all his bad days stacked on top of one another.
Yeah.
But the difference is he's now learned that and truly internalized that he will be warm again.
And so he can deal with it. He isn't just overwhelmed with the idea of dealing with it at all. So he can.
And so when he stands up to it, like literally, Ishar's just like, whoa, no, you're supposed to be broken by this.
Yeah.
And that's what wakes him up.
Yeah.
He's like, oh crap. And then it turns out the world's ending.
Yeah.
And that's when the wind comes in, like, hey, so Odium's gonna take in all the Spren into himself.
So
And we can
let's fix
stop it
that.
if we reforge the Oath Pact.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, at this point, Spren are people to, you know, to Kaladin and company, and he's like, we've got to save them. We've got to do this.
Mhm.
We've got to, like, we can't not do this.
They're not. You can't sacrifice. They don't feel like they can. It's
Mhm.
very different. Yeah.
Well, they're sentient beings,
Mhm.
all on different, scales of it, but
I mean, this is essentially, an apocalyptic extermination event.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, if I have an opportunity to stop this, I got to take it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's the thing. I love the whole thing of what if we split our mind, body, and spirits, so that our souls will endure it. Which again, he actually did a good job of foreshadowing this in the Vasher chapter.
Now, whose idea is that? Kaladin's idea, or how does that work?
I can't remember who suggested it.
I forget who comes up with that idea.
I found it somewhere. Ishar. But yeah, so I can't remember who comes up with it. But again, it was well. Brandon did a good job in this book. As much as I complain about the pacing, because it just kind of had to be. I think the foreshadowing in this book was some of the best he's ever done, because he put foreshadowing for things that were unrelated into other people's chapters. And so the Vasher chapters where he foreshadows this as a solution, because we found out Vasher is shoving his memory of the torture into Bress so that he's not remembering it, so he doesn't get worn down.
Yeah.
So he's essentially putting his mind somewhere else, which is, in the end, what they do here.
Yeah.
Let's see.
What?
The wind is the one that suggests it.
Oh.
Okay.
Which kind of ends with this is the purpose of the wind contacting him, because, it's like, what effect does she end up having, and or whatever.
Yeah.
And
because the wind suggests that they need to reforge the Oath Pact to protect the Spren, and suggests, because that's the thing, Ishar's like, I can't go back, and Nail's like, no, I ain't going back. That's
right.
That's gonna hurt.
And it's like, okay, we got a solution.
Taln and Ash and Chanarach have already gone back.
Wait, did Chanarach die again?
I believe Brandon has given us a word of Brandon that, like, she has died again at some point, but I could be wrong on remembering that.
Because we know she was at the wedding.
Right. I may be remembering something wrong, but I thought I remembered hearing that.
Nope, here it is. Some months prior to the Contest of Champions, Channa had once more died and returned to Braze. I'm trying to find where we learned this.
Is there a link?
Finally found it. Chapter 99 in Wind and Truth, it says. I don't remember this at all.
I don't remember that either.
I don't remember exactly where I heard that, but I remember hearing it somewhere. So. So yeah.
But no, they're forging it all, and that's when we get we're going to whatever this special place is. I think it's like a recreation of Ashen before it was destroyed, right?
I think it was, because that's where the heroes would have felt more comfortable. It does make me wonder. We don't know what's happening with Kalek after that Felt interlude, so
right,
he probably got snatched.
we know he's there.
Yeah, so
because their bodies, minds, and spirits separate.
Now, I have a question because I still wasn't ever able to fully understand, because at the reforging of the Oath Pact, all of the heralds kind of return and reforge
At least
the Oath
in
Pact,
like
right?
a spiritual form.
yeah.
But when Kaladin, shows up in their mystical wonderland, whatever you call it, all of them are there, aren't they?
I think
Yeah.
so.
So
Because
do
they all have
all
to be
of
there
them
for the Oath
then?
Pact.
So do all of them then die and return to Ashen, or?
So
yes, I know their minds and bodies are separated, but that's to prevent them from being tortured while they're dead.
So the issue for the other heralds, not Kaladin, because he now is one,
Right.
is that they don't have a their bodies are they're constructs essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we know Kaladin leaves a corpse
Right.
because Szeth.
But what I'm saying is, are those heralds still on Roshar? Because like we had that scene where Odium contacts, is it Batar?
Yeah.
And and we had Kellic, and it's just like, so what happened to them after the reforging of the Oath Pact?
I'm guessing they drop, their bodies like disappear or they drop.
Okay, so they have left Roshar, essentially.
Because I mean, if their minds are there, then their bodies are just meat.
There's no mind piloting the body.
See, if that's the case, what did Odium and Batar do?
I don't remember.
Odium goes to Batar and he's like, I want to present you a proposition. I have an offer you can't refuse, type thing. And that's the last we heard of it until the reforging of the Oath Pact. And it's just like, okay, so did she do something between that offer and the end of day 10? And if so, what?
I don't know.
And if not, then why put that scene in?
To reaffirm Batar being, I don't know. Like Batar, I don't feel like I have a good grasp on Batar. Like at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I think part of it is to show the madness of the heralds, like show a different one, that not all of them became gibbering masses. But the other thing is, I'm willing to bet it's for something later.
That's possible, yeah.
It also closes up something we've been wondering, because they've said we have this herald in the diagram. We think it, and so you can't have Taravangian ascending to godhood and not address that particular thread, because that's a key piece that he knows. We know he knows about it, and so he has to at least address it. But yeah, it
feels a little, we don't know.
Yeah, I do think it's more to set up stuff later.
Because I mean, we do have 5 more books, and we're gonna have, it's gonna be 2 different heralds. It's gonna focus on. It's gonna be Taln and Ash, right?
Taln and Ash show up as 2 of the 5.
2 of the 5, yeah.
Yeah, the others are
Lift,
and Renarin.
Renarin, okay.
Yeah, no, it's just one of those things that that's the other thing is, when they're being pulled into the Oath Pact, I get the impression the act of doing this is making the heralds think clearly when they're agreeing to it.
Because it's going to pull all that pain, and I mean, and Ishar's not dealing with all the pain that he's been holding too, so that would clear a lot of stuff going on. And Bottom Mishram is free, and the Wind is doing more things. I feel like there's a lot of different parts that would all aim towards making them better a little bit.
I forgot. No, we saw what she's supposed to do. I forgot this. She's the one who put this crystal spikes through Moash's eyes.
Oh, Batar is the one who did that?
Yes.
I'd forgotten about that.
Oh, yeah, him.
Okay.
Speaking of dangling plot threads.
Right.
He's going to be a problem in the future. Clear as crystal.
I know I'm not
Because his
gonna
eyes
get
are
it.
crystal.
I know I
completely
got it.
forgot
I
the
got it.
mystery.
Oh, okay.
I just want a quick, decisive for him because I'm so done. I'm done with it. Because at this point, if he tried to face off against Kaladin when he's now a herald, I'm pretty sure Kaladin should be able to one shot him.
At the
Otherwise,
same
why in the
time,
world would
he can see Spren, and there's no Stormlight on the other side now.
I don't like that train of thought, Jordan. I do not like that train of thought at all. No.
Just saying.
Nope. This is like the Gavinor thing again, all over the place. No. Mm-mm.
We were right though. But
We're not going there.
Mad at us for being right.
Well, the other thing is, what are the like other than allowing him to see Spren? Do the crystal spikes do something else? They
Just
do?
reading this here, it allows him to see investiture, specifically Spren.
Right, which is very similar to the way that an iron spike through the eyes
Mhm.
works.
But I
it's
mean,
just
does
like,
he
is there something else to it? Like,
He'd need
why
the-
crystal? What is the significance
So-
of them being this crystal substance?
Gems.
So my thought is the fact that in both settings now, we've seen that hemalurgy works through the thing that contains investiture on that world. In this
Stormlight
case,
gems.
like
Metal
metal
doesn't
is what.
contain investiture, though. It's a key.
Yeah, but it's the point. It's the key that cognitively connects everything on Scadrial. Crystals, they're what contain stormlight and void light, and
On
presumably
Roshar.
could contain
Life light and
cultivation
whatever
light.
else. Yeah.
Yeah, in theory, on Roshar, and so I think it's more because it's how of the perception of the people that live there.
Mm-hmm.
And now, the hemalurgy specifically lets you steal an ability, and so I don't know exactly how it works on Roshar because I don't know of anyone who's able to see investiture on Roshar.
Rock and other
That's
others
true.
like him
yes,
can see.
Yes.
I don't like where that brain. No, I don't like that.
Sorry,
thought.
repeat that.
So Jordan was saying,
he steals an ability,
and he's like, well, who can see spread? And I'm like, Rock can see spread.
Yeah.
If Moash, no, Brandon.
Well,
if you make
Moash
that the
wouldn't have
case,
done
it's
it.
not okay.
Moash wouldn't have done it because Moash is not like he had it plowed through him, not the one who did the spikes.
I know. I
create
got worried that
spikes. Yeah.
I got worried that Rock
No,
died.
but we
to
know
create
all
spikes,
the
and I was like,
Unalaki
no.
can all of them can see.
We
No,
are
not
waiting
all of
on
them.
that book.
No,
Okay,
remember
well,
they said
yeah,
like
right.
some of them can.
Yeah, he's very special.
Yeah,
He and Cord, I think Cord can see him too.
but they're not the only ones.
Yes, but it's not like everybody. It's just
Yeah.
here and there.
Now, but they can't see other investiture. Like they can only see Spren.
Yes,
Right?
Yeah.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
So,
As far as I know, yeah.
Although, I
But no,
mean,
that's a good point.
technically, a lot of investiture is just straight up visible on this world.
that's true as well.
But like within invested objects, and for example, awakened objects, that could be something.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's the other thing is it takes 2 spikes, and only 1 spike kills. So this could be the effect of stacking that effect twice on someone.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean? Only 1 spike kills?
Well, so because each spike
hemalurgy.
would steal an ability with hemalurgy, and similar to Vin having 2 bronze, or having her own ability to burn bronze, and then getting the hemalurgic spike that lets her super
Enhances
bronze.
the ability that she already has.
This could be like if you 1 spike kills 1 Unalaki with this ability, another spike kills another Unalaki with this ability. You put 2 in him,
Unkalaki.
and so that lets him.
I don't like it. I don't like it. No, I don't like it.
It's just science. It's okay.
No.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know. I don't really know. No, the way, again, seeing hemalurgy used in a very different way is just disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, why are you opening it up? This is already bad.
Yeah, we didn't need it with gems too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm still not convinced entirely that it's gems. I'm interested to hear sort of what.
But that, no,
I mean, it's
that's where my
literally
brain
called
is gone.
gems.
They're crystal, not gems.
Okay, but gems are crystals.
It's just, but
I'm not
the
gonna
fact
get into that.
the fact that it is nondescript crystal, it's just like it's it's named as something distinct compared to something that is common on this world. So it's just sort of a, I don't know. Anyway, anything else we need to talk about before wrapping this up?
There's just
I'm
a
glad
lot.
that we ended with Moash.
Oh, freaking no, I don't.
No,
Oh,
we're at
I
Kumbaya
want-
land and
I'll end on something happy. The Kaladin and Syl kata dance was cute.
Yeah,
I
that was fun.
loved that scene.
Mm-hmm. That was pretty. I liked that.
Well, and again, all of the shippers are just squeeing at this moment.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how this progresses into into the future books, because Nail didn't the fact that Nail has a spren is a little bit different. And Kaladin going in with a wind spren, it seems like those are the only two heralds who actually have spren. Because because Nail's the only one who actually joined his order.
Oh, that's true. Because the other ones just had their honor blades.
So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of affects Kaladin's role as a herald.
I keep feeling like there was another herald that was rumored to have a spren, but I don't
believe so.
know which one it was.
The other thing to remember is the fact that the Stormfather dies.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when Kaladin swears his fifth oath, it's Syl that says these words are accepted.
Mm-hmm. She is the ancient daughter.
Yeah, and so it makes me think that that duty in some way has sort of fallen to her.
A bit.
Yeah.
Well, and the wind still exists, which is interesting because the Stormfather is a spren sort of derived from the wind.
No, from the storm. Or no, sorry, the wind is the storm. Sorry, ignore me.
Yeah.
I'm dumb.
The storm
it's hard
is based,
to keep straight.
The storm is based on, because again, we have the wind, we have the night, and we have the earth. The wind was pulled into the Stormfather. The night was pulled into the Night Watcher.
Mm-hmm.
And
the stone didn't go anywhere because the stone doesn't care.
Although it could be,
exists.
You could extrapolate about the sibling, but that's something else entirely. And it's
we don't know what's going on with that.
Because the sibling is Eurythera, which is literally part of the earth. It's built into the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's not how it is. We know that the sibling is kind of the child of cultivation and honor.
And it always kind of felt like the Night Watcher was a little bit too, but it was more just like she was only cultivations.
More cultivation, and the Stormfather is more honors. And
mm-hmm.
because again, they kind of pulled these spren from these primal forces.
Yeah, but I don't know. I guess if the Eurythera, the sibling, was supposed to be the Earth, then that would kind of fit the third spot.
Yeah,
but we don't have confirmation either.
Honestly, this is pure speculation, but
mm-hmm.
It also would have interesting implications for the thing we keep coming to. What are the unmade?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, are the unmade pieces of like some like other lesser fundamental forces of Roshar or something?
Yeah. I don't know.
Anyway. All right. Well, yeah. We do love hearing from you, our listeners. And even though we're pulling back on the podcast, we are going to keep checking the email accounts. So please write in. You can ask us about the Cosmere. You can drop us your latest theories. And while you're at it, we'd love to hear your feedback about how you think we've done. You can send all your questions and suggestions to cosmerestudies@gmail.com. Seriously, we would absolutely love to hear from you. I'm not even going to say it has to be short and concise. Just we'd love to hear from you and hear your theories, hear everything. Send all your questions and suggestions to cosmerestudies@gmail.com. We do each have our own personal projects outside of this podcast. So, Amy, why don't you lead us off and let us know where we can find you?
Okay. My Facebook is Coincidence Cosplay and Props. My Twitter is @CoincidenceCosp because my name is too long. My Instagram is @coincidence_cosplay. My TikTok is @coincidencecosplay. And my website is still very sad and is www.coincidencecosplay.com. Maybe I will actually improve it now that I'm not going to be doing the podcast as much in the near future. I'm actually trying to post the stuff that I've had taken pictures of and whatever else. So it's going to be this sporadic random whatever. But my more recent projects are doing my custom Mando and maybe trying to get a Helldiver made for me and my husband. So we'll see how that goes.
Jordan is thrilled.
Fine straight.
For democracy.
Look, Jordan, how about you?
Democracy, man. It's great.
Where can we find
you can find me on twitch.tv/splicestream. We're going to be doing again some Quizzard. Thanks to Amy for helping me out with testing that 2 weeks ago. I'm really proud of how it's turned out. The first version, I liked the first version. The second version, I'm liking a lot more.
Cool.
So,
as for me, I don't really create much of my own online content anymore. A lot of my creative works are more personal these days, and like in cooking and writing my own stuff. But I do fairly regularly take part in Jordan's podcast. I think we overleveled. Essentially, it's just him and a bunch of friends from college geeking out about the good old days and video games in like back in the day. Some of our most recent episodes, we talked about Flash games a little while ago. For those of you who are younger, Flash was a program that lived rent free on the internet for a long time, and Adobe stopped supporting a while ago, but all sorts of crazy games were made on this platform. And then the most recent episode, we did a deep dive focused look at Chrono Trigger. And let me tell you, we were geeking out about it like crazy. It was fun.
it was a lot of fun.
Yep. For those of you who want to support the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, we'd still love it if you'd let your friends know about the show. Even if we are stepping away, we've got a backlog of over 180 episodes, and we'd love it if you just check them out. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to find out when we do put out new stuff in the future, since it won't be quite as regular, and to like and subscribe over on youtube.com/Cosmere Studies. And if you want to toss us a good review wherever you'd listen to it, we'd still appreciate that. All right, final thoughts.
Moash just needs to die. But, that's my common thread.
There's
with
a whole
him.
subreddit for you.
Oh, I know. But I don't ever go on Reddit. So
You're better for it.
Yeah, probably.
There's no probably about it. You're better for it.
No. I'm excited to see where Nightblood goes with actual character development.
It'll be interesting to see Nightblood.
I'm so proud of him.
Well, especially because we find out that the book Knights of Wind and Truth was written by Szeth's wife.
I know.
And so what happens to Szeth and Nightblood moving forward? As Nightblood has decided, I can decide. And Szeth has decided, I'm good enough. I'm okay. And it's okay for me to be loved, Yeah. But yeah. It'll be interesting. Well, in addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on youtube.com/Cosmere Studies every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, listeners can find our videos on YouTube or audio versions of the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and just about any other service that carries podcasts by searching for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook under the profile at Cosmere Studies. For our next episode, we're going to be continuing our deeper dives into the various plots over the course of Wind and Truth. Next time, we're going to be looking at Dalinar's and Navani's stories. So make sure to join us in chat for the live discussion on Monday, February 24th, 2025 at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time at 10:30 p.m. Eastern at www.youtube.com/Cosmere Studies. Until then, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening, and remember, there's always
another secret.